elitist radio station based in Nigeria's capital. Our station seeks to broadcast a broad mix of culture and views with priority given to development programming to enable residents share ideas and opinions, music and drama. At Citizen FM, we believe in progressive talk and solution-driven conversation. Our aim is to build a united Nigeria by bringing people of diverse culture together through communication. Enjoy listening to 93.7 Citizen FM. We are more than just a radio station. We are a part of your life.
Looking for the best in news updates?
Yeah, man.
Listen to Citizen FM 93.7 Abuja.
Now listen.
News on the hour, 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m., and 11 a.m., 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., and 5 p.m. News at noon, 12 noon. News from across the states, 4 p.m. And our major news at 6 p.m. Citizen FM 93.7. Always precise in news broadcast.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on Insight. It's Insight on Citizen FM 93.7. My name is Lawrence Umotte. I know, yes, before you even ask, I know it's rare to have Insight on Friday, but the guest we have today, we could not just afford not to bring him on board, but I'll introduce him later. Nigeria's capital market is facing significant challenges that have led to poor liquidity and some will say hindered its performance. Macroeconomic pressures and an unfavorable operating environment have taken a toll on market stability. Moreover, the lack of accurate data for strategic decisions and the existence of multiple taxations and sometimes conflicting regulations further complicate matters, hampering growth and eroding investors' confidence. As at now, currently, headline inflation is hovering around 27-28%, food inflation over 30%, exchange rate is well over 1,000 naira to a dollar, cost of petrol little under 700 naira, and on and on and on. On Insight today, we will be staying on the Nigerian economy, the numerous financial challenges, the present economic challenges of inflation, forex crisis, weak growth, and how the capital market can help lift the economy. So it's a bumper package and a special edition of Insight. My guest today is Professor Uche Owaleke, a professor of finance and capital market, Nasarawa State University. Welcome to Insight, Prof.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. It's indeed my pleasure to be with you this morning.
Yes, Professor Owaleke is Nigeria's first professor of capital market. He is an astute scholar and economic analyst. He is a contributor to Nigeria's leading business and financial intelligence, Business Day. He is a multidisciplinary scholar. He holds a BSc degree in accounting, masters in economics with a specialty in finance, and also a PhD in finance with over 20 years of lecturing engagements in reputable higher institutions in Nigeria. Professor Owaleke was at one time a chief examiner for the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria examination and an external examiner to the University of Jos and the Ahmadu Bello University, and on and on and on. The profile is so formidable that we just have to abridge it. Once again, welcome to Inside Prof.
My pleasure, Lawrence.
You can join the discussion on our live stream on YouTube. Just type in Citizen FM and you will be part of the show. You can also follow us on our social media platforms, 3 of them. on Facebook at Citizen FM Abuja, on Instagram at Citizen FM 937, and also on X at Citizen FM 937. So that's how it's going to be, the Nigerian economy in focus with all the challenges. And as I told you earlier, we have a formidable guest in the studio. Prof, straight up, let's start this way. Nigeria is no doubt facing a cost of living challenge. But will it be an exaggeration to say that things have never been this bad? Or how did we even get here in the first place? Let's start from there.
Well, you can say that again. Nigerians actually going through a tough patch, especially when you look at the major economic indicators. Whether you are talking about inflation, which you have rightly said is, you can say it has hit the roofs. Inflation rate at over 27%, and what's even worrisome is that the food component is in excess of 30% in some states, as a matter of fact. So if you look at the report by the National Bureau of Statistics, Kogi State is recording food inflation rates of 41%. So, and you know the effect of inflation on, or the impact of inflation on purchasing power. So inflation reduces the purchasing power of the naira, and for people on fixed income, it further worsens get their case. So inflation is there. You also have a situation in which even the economy generally is not growing. It's not growing as it should. The economy is experiencing weak growth. The latest MBS report released talks about a GDP growth rate of 2.51%. That's as of the second quarter of 2023. Now, 2.51%, if you take the average we have had in the last 10 years, or let's say since 2015, the average has been below 2%. And when, as an economy, you are growing below your population growth rate of about 2.6%, okay, you can't have serious development. So there is weak growth on one part, there is rising inflation on the other, and that is what economics term stagflation. So what we're experiencing in this economy today is called stagflation. Stagflation is where you have rising inflation amidst stagnant or weak growth rate. So, and that is why we find the misery index rising. The misery index is rising today because of high inflation rate, and also on the other hand, weak economic growth associated with you can also add high unemployment rate, because when an economy is not expanding, you also have labor market issues. So you have high unemployment, you have high inflation, you have weak economic growth. All these combined are what one can say exerting serious pressure on Nigerians. So Nigerians are not finding it easy at all, given this challenges, and all that to have helped to exacerbate poverty. Poverty rate is rising, and it's not funny at all.
Okay, Prof, some would say the intentions of the administration may be good. Well, to put it in perspective, critics have agreed that the situation is an accumulation of series of policies in the past that we are facing today. But it sure looks like the immediate term it's going to be tough for Nigerians. And a lot of Nigerians are in a hurry. People really want to see results immediately. You are a financial expert and also an economist. How do we balance this situation?
Yes, you are very, very correct, Lawrence. All these challenges, where we are today, is a product of many years of I would say in quotes maladministration. Okay, so these are legacy issues that have also manifested in unbridled borrowing, very high, rate of public debt. So today, as we speak, over 90% of what government earns is used to service debt. So very little is left to even, attend to the development needs of the country. So yes, these things have been there, but I must also say that part of why it's pinching now is as a result of the sudden implementation of some of the reforms we've had, such as the
subsidy
removal, and also the unification of exchange rate. Yes. So because they were done in one fell swoop, okay, that is why we are also feeling this the impact is much. Look at fuel price, for example, where it is today and where it was before May. Look at exchange rate. So the fact that they have come all at once, the reforms are coming all at once, have also contributed to this hardship that Nigerians are currently facing. Left to me, the advice I had for the government at the time, was to find a way to face these reforms in order to minimize the adverse impact. But they have come. It's for us to continue to see how we can navigate the challenges, and more importantly, ameliorate the impact they are having on the citizens.
Okay, Bros, let's look at communication, the importance of messaging, especially for our foreign investors, because we are trying to get foreign investors to come invest in Nigeria. And we have situation where we have capital flights, in two directions. People are expected to bring their money in. But we now have people taking their money out, and others outside are reluctant in bringing their money in. Is it that we are not getting the messaging right?
You see, capital flows are a function of many factors, many variables. It's not only about communication, because these people we are targeting, many of them are investment savvy. Okay, they are also monitoring investment situation in many countries.
And the world is a global village.
It's a global village. So that's why I keep saying we don't. The emphasis actually should be on ensuring that our environment is right. Once your environment is right, you don't even need to go to say you want to bring them. They will on their own come, because they are looking for returns, and they will always go to where investments will always flow to where they are welcome. So the environment is right. So if your environment is not right, and you're putting out messages and you're going out to lure them, okay, it may still not work. So putting the cart before the horse would mean ensuring that your investment climate is right, your macro environment is stable. That is what will bring them. Issues to do with insecurity, for example, they need to be tackled. If this insecurity is not dealt with, you are not likely to see any serious foreign direct investments into Nigeria. You will continue to find them in a few places. If you check the capital importation reports by the National Bureau of Statistics, okay, you would find that capital flows, capital importation have actually been concentrated in just a few areas. Most of the time you find in states like Lagos and a few other states. So much of it has not come, okay, again, partly because of the right environment, which includes this issue of security. Remember, insecurity is also affecting even the inflation. The food pressure we have today is partly because farmers are not unable to go to farms. So we need to get the environment right. If you look at what is happening even in the stock market today, if you check, a number of companies are exiting. You mentioned some people are leaving. Companies are exiting the market as a result of again harsh economic conditions, particularly this issue of forex. A lot of companies that are unable to access forex are having difficulty surviving. So many of them, some of them are exiting the country. So we need to fix our environment right before we can talk about really attracting investments. And when I mean investments, I don't just mean portfolio investments. These ones that come and go, at any slight shock. But I'm talking about the permanent ones, the foreign direct ones that can also help to create, jobs.
Jobs. Okay, Prof, let's look at some monetary policies. The CBN, for example, there is a new sheriff in town,
Yes.
and we know that the CBN has the mandate of maintaining monetary policy,
Yes.
price stability, and that includes inflation, exchange rate, and interest rate. How would you rate? I know that it's pretty early in the day for the new sheriff in town, but from what you've seen so far, are you optimistic that the CBN is really going to get a grasp of the situation?
Yeah, I think so. Especially, I saw that the central bank governor is making the right, he's saying the right things. And of course, you know that, much later today, he will also be unveiling his plans at the bankers, bankers deny in Lagos. So when I say he's been saying the right things, it includes the fact that he's concerned about clearing backlog of forex demands. I'm aware that the central bank is making serious effort to clear those backlogs. We have heard that the government plans to, if you like, use future streams of LNG dividends, and borrow against them from some consortium of banks. So if they're getting this money from the banks, and they're also getting from Afrexim Bank about $3 billion. So the intention is to really ensure that the backlog is cleared. Because if you don't clear the backlog, you don't inject confidence. Okay, people will unlikely come to put money here if they know that when they want to go, they will have difficulty taking out their money. So a lot of arrears are still pending. So until you clear them, you don't put confidence. So that is the first step, and he has said the bank is committed to doing that. All right. There's also this issue of course, monetary policy rates. MPC have not met when they ought to have met. The last couple of they didn't meet in September, and they've also failed to meet in November. But I also think it's also part of the transition we are, experiencing. What's important is that, the central bank is also using other monetary policy tools to deal with inflation, because people. The expectation was the meeting would have, for example, increased the monetary policy rate, to be able to deal with inflation. But if you notice what has been happening, okay, the central bank has been using other tools in the interim, such as open market operations. The other day we read that even the issue of treasury, the issue of treasury bills attracted as much as 17%, 18%, interest. So that tells you that the central bank is resourcing to other tools at its disposal to deal with inflation, not necessarily waiting for the MPC to hike monetary policy rate. So I think so far, I think from body actions, from statements, I think going forward, we should be able to have a handle on inflation rates. But again, I must say that the issue of inflation in this country is not a battle for the central bank alone. Given the drivers of inflation in Nigeria, the drivers of inflation in Nigeria are not only monetary, but you also have non-monetary factors. While the central bank can tackle the monetary factors, the non-monetary factors must be dealt with by the government. And when I say non-monetary factors, I'm talking about insecurity. Remember, we said insecurity is affecting food inflation. The issue of the energy. Okay, we must fix our refineries. Otherwise, the more we import petrol, the more the pump price of fuel goes up, the more you have inflation. There are no two ways about it. So the government has to deal with this issue of refineries, local reproduction of refineries, issue of insecurity. Okay, and of course, when you deal with refineries, you also have to bring down transport costs. And there's also the issue of power, electricity. These are not things within the remit of the central bank. These are things the government must handle in order to help inflation, come down. So the two must work together. Fiscal and monetary authorities must synchronize to be able to bring down inflation rates.
Well, Prof, the forex situation is proving to be more challenging by the day, especially with the expectation of inflow occasioned by unified exchange rate.
Yes.
This do not seem to be happening, at least for now. How do we get out of this?
You see, when you talk about forex, in the realm of exchange rate, You can see that number one, the naira, sudden unification devalued the naira substantially, and today the original intention was to merge, to converge both the official and the parallel market rate. Initially they converged, but today we've also seen they're beginning to widen. So it's really an issue. And what is the major determinant of exchange rate? Exchange rate, don't forget, is a price. All right, and what determines price? Demand and supply, forces. Now, in my view, what the government has been focusing on is on the supply side.
Okay.
Is what do we do to improve liquidity in the forex market? To be able to, put some stability in that market. So that's the focus of the government, for now. And that is why they are talking about borrowing from banks using LNG dividends. They're also talking about borrowing from Afrexim Bank. Okay, so government is interested in supply. And that's also part of why the president has also been traveling to, some countries talking about, foreign investments coming in. That will also boost supply. So these measures are in order, okay? But what they have not done, which
they are yet to do.
Which I would suggest very strongly, is that, as I mentioned earlier, is about supply and demand. It's not just about supply. There has to be a double-barreled approach to this issue of forex crisis, because even if you deal with the supply, if you bring dollars and you have not dealt with the demand side, the dollars will vanish. Okay, so you have to deal with the demand as well. One way to deal with the demand, I've always said, is to see how you can get out a Buy Nigerian law. We need a Buy Nigerian law that will make it mandatory for at least government agencies to ensure that they procure locally, except when that thing is not available in Nigeria. Okay, you don't use taxpayers' money to buy for any foreign good when the good is also available here domestically. So if you have a Buy Nigerian law, I won't expect that government agents should be buying furniture, for example, from abroad, should be importing furniture. Okay, I won't expect that even the National Assembly should be importing cars when we have local manufacturers that can be encouraged. They can supply them these vehicles. So a Buy Nigerian law is actually required to reduce the demand on dollar, because that will reduce the pressure. In the US today, in spite of their wealth, in spite of US today in 2021 came up with a Build America, Buy America Act to also promote, conserve forex and promote, remember, by the way, dollar is universally, it's a convertible currency, all right? And before then too, in 1933, they also had a Buy American Act when they had, some challenges. So that is what we need to do. We have a Buy Nigerian law. What we had before in the country, we still have is executive order. Executive orders don't have any legal teeth. And that is why you find, in spite of the Executive Order 5 that was signed by the then President, acting President Yemi Osibanjo, we still don't, we have not had a grip on the demand. That is one thing we can do about demand, Buy Nigerian law. Another thing we can also consider is the fact that if you check the last 5 years, our major imports have been from China. All right? If your major imports have been from China, why don't you scale up? Why don't you consider a situation in which you are settling transactions in China in the yuan instead of buying from China and paying dollars? So if you scale up this currency swap with China, for example, the last one we had was just $2 billion, and you can see we didn't find the impact. If we scale it up and to a point where imports from China are settled in yuan, it will reduce the pressure on the dollar. In our foreign reserves today, we don't have much of yuan. The bulk of it is still dollar. How can we increase the stock of yuan to be able to buy goods from China? It is by issuing panda bonds. Okay, Nigeria can issue what we call panda bonds. Panda bonds are bonds that are issued in yuan. Okay, so investors will give us yuan. When we now have the yuan and we have in our reserves, we can now use that to meet our obligations to China in yuan. China buys oil from us, so when they also buy from us, they give us naira. That's the part of the currency swap. So that reduces the pressure on the dollar. So whatever we can do to reduce the pressure on the dollar, okay, in terms of demand, is welcome, and we need to be doing that alongside the effort to also deal with the supply. That's the only way it can work.
But Prof, some people listening to you when you propose the Buy Nigerian law will say, well, In addition to that, why don't we also take a look at our own orientation as Nigerians? The average Nigerian would prefer something foreign. The example they give is the Nigerian rice, for example.
Yes.
You know, with the former administration made a lot of effort to improve that sector, and but people still prefer foreign rice because, I don't know, for several reasons, they come in cheap and everything. And so if we put that into the homes of a lot of our elites also, who are not even in government, you find a lot of things foreign.
Yes, yes, absolutely, you're right. You see, when we say buy Nigerian law, it will start with the government. It will start with things to do with taxpayers' funds. All right. So it begins from there. When Nigerians see that those in leadership, the executive arm, the legislature, the judiciary, the treaties, when Nigerians see that these people are also patronizing
by Nigeria, made in Nigeria.
But they're leading by example. Okay, I'm pretty sure on their own, a lot of Nigerians will also begin to patronize locally made products. And remember too, when we have a buy Nigerian law, it will compel the government to now see the need to really, really support the local industry, the local industry, and to a point where you also improve their competitive capacity. Yes, and competitive ability. So you now begin to see improvement in quality of locally made products, because when you don't patronize them, they don't have the capital to even invest to improve on quality. Okay, that was why when the central bank initially stopped the 43 items from assessing official forex, part of the intention was actually to encourage the production of those items. Remember, rice is one of the items. Okay, when you go through all those items, rice, furniture, which is also why, one of the things I had my reservation about is this sudden and readmission of all the 43 items at the same time. I would have preferred a situation in which would have done that selectively, over a period of time. So, for example, if you look at that list,
maybe the government was in a hurry to ease pressure. Current pressure, and
but no, those items will now also go to put more pressure on the official market. Initially, they were not in the official market. Now, the official market, if you go there now, you see a long queue because those items have been readmitted. So, if the government had done that selectively, I think maybe the distortion would have been much less. If you look at those items, for example, you see private jets. Private jet is one of the items. You will see toothpick. So why would somebody go to assess official forex to buy private jet at this point in time? I'm not saying people shouldn't buy private jets, but we are saying at the period we are in, this is the period we should be able to make some sacrifice for a period of time. All right. That's also why I had said at the time the issue of purchasing vehicles, SUVs for National Assembly, where I'm not saying they shouldn't drive good cars or SUV, but the period we are in, that can wait. For example, until the situation in forex improves. Look at recently the Zambian. I'm sure you read the Zambian president was saying stopping all government agencies from procuring foreign goods until I think he said until March, until the end of the financial year. So that's the kind of thing I want to see happening in Nigeria, where we're also looking at the demand side. Because when you lead by example, citizens on their own will follow suit. Remember, the private sector, you can't force them to, but when they also see that local industries are doing well, the government is also patronizing on their own, so government can even incentivize the private companies to patronize locally made products. If you buy local made products, for example, you have this incentive, that way everybody gives in.
Okay, Prof, we need to take a short break now. Well, inside we'll take a short break. My guest has been Professor Uche Owaleke, Professor of Finance and Capital Market from the Nasarawa State University. He's been helping us make sense of the situation, the challenges in Nigeria in terms of our economy and our finances. Insight will return in a moment. Please don't go away.
Reach out. Speak up. Speak out. You are the voice of a new generation. And this
Is your station.
Talk Radio 93.7 Citizen FM.
Abuja.
Wake up. Reach out. Speak up. Speak out.
Looking for the best in news updates?
Yeah, man.
Listen to Citizen FM 93.7 Abuja.
Now listen.
News on the hour, 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m., and 11 a.m. 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., and 5 p.m. News at noon, 12 noon. News from across the states, 4 p.m. And our major news at 6 p.m. Citizen FM 93.7. Always precise in news broadcast.
Are you a worker in a company? Are you working for the government? Are you an employer of labor? Or are you a businessman? No matter what work you do, join us on Workers' Half Hour every Thursday from 2 to 2:30 p.m. Workers' Half Hour is educational and entertaining and also interactive. Let us discuss the challenges and beauty of working together. Workers' Half Hour every Thursday, 2 to 2:30 p.m. on Citizen FM 93.7 Abuja. Workers build the nation.
Abuja.
Wake up. Reach out. Speak up. Speak out. You are the voice of a new generation. And this
Is your station.
Talk Radio 93.7 Citizen FM.
Thank you so much for staying tuned. It's still Insight on Citizen FM 93.7. My name is Lawrence Umotte, and my guest is still in the studio, Professor Uche Uwaleke, Professor of Finance and Capital Market, Nasarawa State University. Thank you, Prof, for staying tuned.
Thank you, Lawrence.
All right. Yes, the phone lines are open now. You can call us on 0903 2229 797. That's 0903 2229 797. You can also call us on 0818 2222205, or you can call us on 0818 2222206. Any of the numbers. You can also send us a WhatsApp message on any of these numbers, and I'm sure Prof will respond to any of your questions. And don't forget our social media platforms for your interaction: on Facebook at Citizen FM Abuja, on Instagram at Citizen FM 937, and also on X at Citizen FM 937. The Nigerian economy in focus, challenges, way to go, what to do to get out of this situation. Our guest once again, Professor Uche Uwaleke, Professor of Finance and Capital Market, Nasarawa State University. Prof, there's been this recurring debate. Whenever issues come up like this, a lot of people make maybe give advice, and one of the things they say, the cost of governance. We need to cut the cost of governance. Now, that's subject to a lot of interpretations. Some people say one of the ways to go is to downsize the workforce, and that's a touchy issue, especially when it comes to labor. Some others have proposed structural reforms and everything, but the downsizing workforce, do you think any government can muster the willpower to do that?
You see, the concerns are, I would say, founded. It's not as if they are unfounded, and that's because when you look at the spending by the government, it's usually tilted more on recurrent. If you look at the 2024 budget, for example, the proposed, budget, for example, the government intends to aggregate spending is 26 trillion. That's what is there in the 2024 budget. And you now find recurrent expenditure, non-debt, at over 10 trillion. Okay, as a matter of fact, out of the 26 trillion, less than 6 trillion is for capital. So the others are for recurrent, whether it is debt or non-debt. Okay, the debt recurrent talks about debt service. Okay, and then the non-debt is now where personnel comes in. So if you look at that recurrent, personnel constitutes the bulk.
Large chunk.
Yeah, large chunk. You have overheads and you have personnel. So it's actually an issue. There's also the issue of overheads. Okay, so when people talk about cost of governance, there's also the issue of overheads, and that was why under the Buhari administration, the first term, we had the efficiency unit was set up. So I think it's something that needs to be looked into, cost of governance generally, which is also why a lot of people think that even the size of government is also one of it. It's a situation in which you'll have close to 50 ministers. Okay,
almost.
Oh yes, so that's also large. At the state level, you also have that. So if there is a way, particularly when you consider the fact that a number of MDAs have overlapping functions. Okay, for a long time we have been talking about this issue of rationalizing agencies. The Orosanya reports, remember? Okay, so there is the need to look at those things critically, especially the issue of overlapping functions, rationalizing them. Okay, and then ensuring that you don't spend money, because when functions overlap, you end up spending money on the same thing, without streamlining, what you're spending on. So that is important. But I don't think this is the time to say we want to
downsize.
Yes, downsize, or get workers off what they're doing. Again, because of the economic situation we find ourselves. Now, if you look at our population, you look at the size of our economy. Okay, I still don't think that the number of workers we have in the public service is too large, given our population, given the size of the economy. Okay, I do not think it's large. Even when we are rationalizing, okay, we should find a way to also accommodate those that are going to be affected. Okay, even if they can be accommodated in the especially when you are automating. Automation, if you're automating some functions, of course that may also affect those that are working there. But what is important is that people who will eventually be affected, okay, is either you train them to also have the requisite skills to be able to function in those capacities, or when somebody is found to be completely redundant, that person should also be supported to start a small business or to start something on his or her own. Okay, that way you don't make things a lot more difficult for such people. So overall, I would say the time doesn't really call for that, downsizing, but at the same time, government should have a plan in which MDAs, there are too many, they're too large, and many of them doing the same thing are rationalized. And then the plan should also accommodate what to do with the fallout. Okay, people that will eventually not fit into the new structure. Okay, what to do with them. All right, such that at the end of the day, it's a win-win. It's a win-win situation. Yes.
Okay, Prof. Let's talk briefly on our debt profile. Over $100 billion. Some people have condemned attempts by governments to engage in more borrowings. But is it really possible not to borrow now?
You see, what I've always said is that government borrowings are not in themselves bad. Yes. Developing countries generally, okay, must of necessity have budget deficit. Budget deficit means that your planned spending must be higher than your planned revenue, and that's because of the weak domestic revenue mobilization ability of these economies. Now look at our revenue to GDP at 8%, very low. Now the government plans to move it to 18%. Okay, so our revenue generating mobilization domestic capacity is weak. Now against that backdrop, you can't but have deficit, because if you say you want to just plan within what you're able to mobilize, remember the one we are expecting from oil, you can't bank on that. That is not sustainable. So if we say we want to plan our budget based on only what we can generate, we will never develop, we will never grow as a country. Take for example the 2024 budget. The federally collectible revenue in that budget is 9 trillion. Okay, it's 9 trillion. Now it has a deficit of over 10. If you plan to spend 26 trillion, for example, and you have a deficit of 10 trillion, it means what you plan to raise is not up to the amount you plan to spend. Okay, so imagine if the country were to say, okay, let's restrict our spending 2024 to just what we're able to raise. How far can we go? So we necessarily have to borrow. But what is important is, how do we borrow? And to what use do we put such loans? That is what is important. And why we have found ourselves in this situation today is that we have in the past borrowed recklessly. We have not also applied them to proper use. When you borrow for consumption, that is where the problem is. Okay, today our debt stock is over 87 trillion naira. All right, including the ways and means, the lendings, the over time, the central bank over 22 trillion, ways and means to the government. So those borrowings have also helped to fuel inflation. So the point I'm making is this: that what's important is, how do we borrow? What use are we putting such funds? All right. You see, if you look at our debt stock today, the structure of our domestic debt stock, you'll find that FGM bonds is accounting for over 70% of it. The real infrastructure bond in that debt stock is less than 3%. Infrastructure bond in that domestic debt is, if you look at it, is Sukuk. Sukuk and green bonds represents less than 3% of what we have borrowed. So we have what we have borrowed essentially is, when you use FGM bonds to borrow, you can do anything with the money. You can pay salaries, you can do recurrent. When you borrow for recurrent, you don't you put yourself into trouble, because you won't even have the capacity to repair. That's why today over 90% of what we are earning is spent on debt service alone. Imagine if we had borrowed all those funds for project tied loan, project tied if we had used project tied loans to borrow, okay, or if we had put them in infrastructure or in capital projects, by now the issue of capacity to repair wouldn't be there. And you would have also seen the impact on the economy in terms of opening up the economy, because when you put money on infrastructure, you open up the economy more, okay, you create more job opportunities, all right, and you even increase the capacity of the economy to generate more revenue. Okay, that's when you put money in infrastructure. Imagine if the power, for example, situation had improved significantly because of the loans, or today our refineries are functioning. All right, so it's important that going forward, our loans are project tied. We put them in projects, particularly those that are self-liquidating, so we don't have the burden of paying back. So even as an individual, when you borrow to buy a car that you use for pleasure, you don't borrow to buy a car that you use for pleasure. But if you borrow and buy a car that you use for commercial purposes, okay, it makes you have the capacity at least to repair. Other things being equal, when I saw that things, it means we assume that the car won't have an accident and all that. So it's important that we should take this issue of debt into
consideration.
Yes, because if you look at recently, I read South Africa was issuing sukuk of over 27 billion rand, and I clapped. I said that's the way to go. Nigeria should also follow suit. We should do more of infrastructure bonds. Well, that's the kind of things we want to see. The capital market is there, to provide that, that support.
Okay, Prof, before we wrap up, let's come back to the capital market. That's your forte. But first, a lot of people think or believe that the capital market sounds elitist. What exactly is the capital market, and how can it lift the the economy?
Well, the capital market is for everyone, not necessarily the elites. It's also for small players, for small savers. Okay, the capital market is like every other financial market. What do financial markets do? Financial markets essentially mobilize funds from those that have, we call the surplus units, and channel to the deficit units, those looking for those funds. That is what the capital market, financial markets do. And capital market is an aspect of the financial market. So essentially, it is financial intermediation. That's why I said it's everyone. So even for small savers, okay, there is something. The capital market has something for small savers. Okay, that's what we call mutual funds. Okay, small savers can also participate in mutual funds. Those that save 5,000, 10,000 can also be part of mutual funds. You contribute, and the mutual fund companies will invest such money, and whatever comes will be shared. All right, even on the part of the government. That's why the government started the FGN savings bond. FGN savings bond is meant for small savers, where with 5,000 you can invest in government bond. That's the essence of FGN savings bond. So it is there for everybody. It is an avenue where people can save. Okay, it helps you to save, and of course invest and get returns. But essentially, for those looking for funds, usually the government and companies, they can also come there to raise money, to borrow. So you see the government, issuing bonds, coming to borrow. You see companies also going to borrow, or also companies issuing what we call shares. Shares are not loans. Shares are, when a company is issuing shares, it's simply giving you opportunity to become a part owner of the company. Okay, so even when you don't hear a company is issuing shares, but you want to be a part owner of First Bank, for example, all you need to do is to buy First Bank shares through your stockbroker. Okay, your stockbroker will now help you look for someone who has the shares and wants to sell. That's what we call secondary market. Okay, and so you can also buy and become a shareholder of First Bank. So it's one market that has in the past have been contributing to the growth of this economy, helping governments. Most of this support, budget finance support we talk about is a capital market. When they come to issue bonds, the market has also been helping companies to grow. Today, you have about 155 companies listed on the Nigerian
stock exchange.
Yes, Nigerian exchange. They are all there, helping to grow the economy. By, as I said earlier on, usually when they come, they issue shares, people participate. All right. Okay. So that is the kind of thing the market does, and we are also expecting that, given the size of our economy, given the number of companies we have in this country, a lot more companies should come. All right, but the government too, in my view, should also try to incentivize these companies to go there. Today we have multinationals, and a lot of them that are not listed. Okay, so today the talk is, how do we get the likes of Olam Group? How do we get the likes of Chevron? How do we get the likes of MultiChoice to come and list? They are not there. Okay, these are companies that are already listed in their parent home countries. What we call primary listing. So how do we also have them to do secondary listing here, so that they can also help to grow the economy? So I am saying the major reason why companies list on the market is to be able to raise funds. But when a company feels it can get these funds from, yes, they may not feel the need. So for them to come, the government needs to incentivize them, for them to come. Just like we saw MTN, listing on our market. So the incentive has to be there for these companies to come. And I want to encourage Nigerians to, as I said, find a way of saving and investing long term. Long term means the capital market. Short term is the money market, the banks. When you put money in the bank, we say that is money market. But when you put it in the capital market, that is long-term investment. Which actually is what this country needs at the moment.
All right, Prof, thank you so much for your interventions and insight. It's been a pleasure listening to you as you gave us your own perspective of how things should be in the economy. Thank you so much, Professor Uche Owaleke, Professor of Finance and Capital Market, Sarawak State University.
My pleasure, Lawrence.
All right.
I'm delighted to be here.
All right, so that's our package on Insight today. The program returns next week for another edition. My name is Lawrence Umotte. Enjoy the rest of your day.